Okay, if you've been reading the headlines lately, you probably feel like we're standing right on the brink of this massive, unprecedented wave of job destruction, right? The anxiety around AI is, well, it's practically everywhere. But today, in this explainer, we're going to confront that fear head on with hard economic data, historical precedents, and real enterprise telemetry. And what we find when we actually look at the numbers is a profound shift toward optimism, what we call a structural labor re-equilibrium. We're going to break down exactly why the math proves AI is actually a massive net job creator, and more importantly, how you can strategically position yourself for this entirely new era.
So let's just dismantle this AI doomer myth right out of the gate. NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang recently pushed back really hard against this prevailing narrative that AI is going to just wipe out 50% of jobs. He flat out called it complete nonsense. As he pointed out, young people graduating today who are native users of AI, they're incredibly employable. The reality here is that you aren't losing your job to AI, you're losing it to someone who is an expert in using AI. Technology has always been this engine for growth, fundamentally making human intelligence far more scalable and vastly more valuable.
And that brings us to the core mystery we need to solve today. What really happens when technology automates the things we do? It's so easy to just assume that, if a machine takes over a task, the human who used to do it just gets fired. It's a very linear, intuitive way of looking at things. But economics is rarely linear. We have to ask ourselves, what happens to the demand for a product or a service when the cost of producing it absolutely plummets? Does the demand stay exactly the same, or does it just explode?
Well, to understand our future, we actually need to take a quick trip back to the 19th century. We're looking at an incredible economic concept called the Jevons paradox, and it literally turns everything we fear about efficiency completely upside down. So back in 1865, this British economist named William Stanley Jevons noticed something super weird. As steam engines got drastically more efficient at burning coal, everyone assumed coal consumption would drop, right? Makes perfect sense. But wrong. Coal consumption absolutely surged. Because power was suddenly cheaper, entirely new industries started adopting steam engines. Efficiency didn't shrink the need for the resource, it radically expanded the total market for it.
And just like those better steam engines unlocked this massive hunger for coal, AI is doing the exact same thing for the 21st century cognitive economy. By drastically lowering the costs of basic thought, things like generating content, running basic analysis, writing boilerplate code, AI is unlocking a near infinite demand for high-level cognitive work. We aren't hitting a ceiling of demand here. Lowering the cost of basic cognition actually unlocks this massive backlog of previously unfeasible tasks. Suddenly, companies can justify deep market research for these tiny niche segments, or they can launch massive localization efforts. And that creates an enormous surge in the need for human professionals to actually guide and manage these new tools.
Now, if you're sitting there thinking this is just some nice theory, history proves this rebound effect happens literally every single time. Look at the spreadsheet. When software like VisiCalc and Lotus 123 showed up in the 80s, people were absolutely convinced accountants were finished. Pack it up, the computers won, right? But instead, because running a financial model was suddenly cheap, companies wanted way more models. Demand for financial analysts skyrocketed. And the exact same thing happened with ATMs. They made operating a single bank branch cheaper, so guess what? Banks opened way more branches, which ultimately meant they had to hire more human tellers to focus on complex customer relationships. Efficiency always expands what is possible.
So let's look at the hard data. The World Economic Forum's macroeconomic projections for 2026 to 2030 show this exact rebound effect happening right now. Yes, there is displacement for sure. Automation absolutely changes the nature of specific tasks, displacing roughly 92 million roles. We can't ignore that. But look at the growth side of the equation, an estimated 170 million newly created roles. This massive surge represents new industries, new software infrastructure, and entirely new service sectors that are currently being built right on top of this powerful technological foundation.
And when you do the math, that results in a staggering global net gain of 78 million jobs. 78 million. The numbers prove that we are looking at an engine of massive job creation, not some sci-fi apocalypse. The lingering fear of permanent white-collar labor displacement just isn't supported by the macroeconomic projections. We are drastically scaling human ambition right now, and to achieve those newly unlocked ambitions, the global economy fundamentally needs more humans, not fewer.
What's really fascinating is that the market is already paying a massive premium for this evolution. Right now, there is a 56% wage premium for AI-competent workers. And get this, that's up from just a 25% premium recorded a year prior. That tells us something absolutely vital. The market aggressively rewards workers who treat AI as a tool to expand their own capabilities.
The financial incentives are heavily skewed toward those who embrace this as a new foundational skill. Honestly, it's very much like basic computer literacy was back in the 1990s.
But that begs a really personal question, doesn't it? If the machine is doing the executing, what exactly are you supposed to be doing to earn that 56% premium? If an AI agent can write the boilerplate code, summarize that 50-page PDF you didn't want to read, and draft all your emails, what makes you, the human worker, so incredibly valuable? Where does your daily effort actually go when the machine is the one doing the typing?
Well, the answer starts with what we like to call the daily forklift effect. Think about it. Just like a physical forklift stops a warehouse worker from totally destroying their back, AI lifts the exhausting, repetitive cognitive load. According to recent McKinsey and Slack datasets, AI offloads the heavy cognitive paperwork, giving the median knowledge worker back over 6 hours a week. 6 hours! It frees us from the rote execution that used to just eat up our days and burn us out, finally allowing us to pivot to the strategic tasks that actually move the needle.
And we can actually see mathematically that human value shifts to oversight. There's this metric called the composite agent value, and it basically proves that enterprise ROI completely falls apart without human verification. In 2026, enterprise telemetry showed that only 41% of AI agent programs hit a positive ROI in their first year. Why? Simply because of unmeasured human rework. The formula applies this quality multiplier penalty if a human has to heavily edit the AI's output. Think of a lawyer generating a contract with AI. It's just a draft, right? A human professional still has to read, verify, and take legal liability for every single word. The speed advantage of AI completely 100% depends on human expertise checking its work.
So what this means for you is that your career is no longer about just execution and production. Your value is now entirely concentrated in high-level judgment and direction. We are rapidly transitioning away from being rewarded just for writing a first draft or pulling basic data. The quality bar has skyrocketed because, well, everyone has an AI to do the basics for them now. Your true value lies in knowing which problem to actually solve, catching those really subtle errors an AI misses, and managing the complex human relationships, the negotiations, and the empathy that machines simply do not and cannot possess.
Because of this massive shift, we are seeing the rapid emergence of entirely new trades that literally didn't even exist 5 years ago, massively expanding the scope of the modern workplace. We're seeing incredible demand for prompt engineers who know exactly how to extract the absolute best output from these models. We now need AI orchestrators who manage complex pipelines and multiple AI agents working together. We need systems architects to handle the massive volume of new code being generated. And crucially, we need specialists in AI ethics and compliance to govern these systems. These are deeply human jobs, requiring human context, nuanced judgment, and strict oversight.
When you put all this data together, the picture is incredibly clear. We aren't facing job destruction. We are experiencing a structural labor re-equilibrium, where human potential is actually being elevated. By treating AI as this cognitive forklift, we aren't compressing the workforce. We're expanding the absolute limits of what a team can achieve. We are entering this era of unprecedented human-AI synergy, where our ability to direct, to judge, and to connect with others matters more than it ever has in human history.
Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Now that you know the math behind the cognitive economy, I want to leave you with one final thought to chew on. The data is crystal clear. Falling costs in intelligence will create an absolute explosion of demand for human oversight, empathy, and creativity. The future doesn't belong to the machines. It belongs to the humans who use them to do incredible things. So the question is, are you going to keep fearing the tide, or are you ready to ride the wave?